Hi, I'm Rowena. I gave my son $140,000 to help him build a future, but somehow I was the one erased from it. My family made up a lie to keep me from attending Thanksgiving, but I was the only one left out. Worse than the lie was the silence. The kind that doesn't scream, it just quietly locks the door behind you. They cropped me out of photos, deleted my name from papers, and rewrote the story without me, all while smiling across a table I paid for. Why would your own child cut you out of the family you built? And what happens when the mother they dismissed decides she's done being quiet? The morning was still, unnaturally so. Outside, the trees barely moved, their limbs frozen mid-sway, as if even the wind had paused to brace for something unseen. The light filtering through my kitchen window in Plano held that strange November chill, not from the weather, but from something in the air I couldn't quite name. My coffee had gone cold before I ever picked it up. The message on my phone stared back at me, short and precise, as if drafted by a stranger. "Take this Thanksgiving off, Mom. We've got it." There were no emojis, no warmth, no trace of Thatcher's voice in those 10 words. Just a clipped dismissal, a notification tone, then silence. I didn't respond right away. Instead, my mind raced backward, to a day in July when the sun was too bright and hope still had a place in our conversations. Thatcher and Valora had invited me to their new house. Well, the house they were about to close on. They were giddy, eyes sparkling like teenagers showing off a high school trophy. "We just need a little help to seal the deal, Mom," Thatcher had said, handing me a stack of documents. "You won't need to do anything long-term. Just a transfer and a few signatures to verify things on paper. Nothing complicated." I had asked questions. Not many, but enough to feel better. Still, I didn't fully understand the legalese. Who really does? What mattered to me was their tone. Grateful, eager, warm. They hugged me after I agreed to transfer $140,000. Said they couldn't have done it without me. I believed them. Because that's what mothers do. It wasn't the first time. Years earlier, I had helped Thatcher with student loans. Then again when Aaron was born, and daycare nearly broke their budget. I stepped in during the pandemic, when they both lost jobs. Watched Aaron 3 days a week, while Valora rebuilt her influencer brand, and Thatcher worked late into the evenings. Never once did I complain. Not even when my savings dwindled faster than I could refill it. Because that's what mothers do. So when I saw that message this morning, sitting on the same phone I used to record Aaron's first words, something shifted. Not immediately. It was like the slow, almost imperceptible cracking of ice beneath your feet. You don't hear it all at once, but once you do, it's too late to step back. Later that afternoon, I drove to the farmer's market. A small habit of mine, more for conversation than vegetables. There was a woman there I often chatted with, Linda, I think, who always asked about Aaron. She didn't ask today. Maybe she'd seen the same post I hadn't yet found. The market was bustling, full of families collecting ingredients for meals I wouldn't be part of. Kids ran with sticky hands and breathless laughter, while parents compared stuffing mixes and turkey sizes. The whole town felt folded into itself, preparing for warmth I no longer had a key to. I walked past it all, feeling like a ghost at a party I hadn't realized I'd been uninvited from. Back home, I took off my coat slowly, each motion deliberate. I placed my keys in the same bowl I always used, sat at the kitchen table I once saved for, and stared again at the message. It hadn't changed, still short, still cold. I noticed then, there was no mention of Aaron, no, "she misses you," no, "see you soon." I opened the group chat. No new messages, no plans, no reminders. Just silence. It wasn't that they didn't need me anymore. It wasn't even that they wanted space. They just didn't want me there. Not now, not this year, maybe not ever again. For a long time, I sat in that silence, letting it wash over me in waves. A different kind of cold, sharper than any wind. And in that silence, something in me began to settle. Not acceptance, not yet. But clarity. A realization that stung more than I was ready to admit. I hadn't been asked to step back. I had been removed. I put down the phone and stared at the empty dining room. Quiet, cold, and suddenly unfamiliar. 2 days passed. I didn't respond to the message, didn't call, didn't ask questions. I kept telling myself it was just miscommunication, some mix-up, some moment of oversight that would pass. But deep down, I already knew. That morning, I made coffee the way I always did. 2 spoons of sugar, no cream. It sat untouched on the kitchen table while I stared out at the street. Cars drove by, neighbors carried bags of groceries, children skipped across the sidewalk in scarves too big for their necks. Thanksgiving was around the corner. It was supposed to be loud, messy, warm. I opened my phone, not to call Thatcher, but to distract myself. Social media has a cruel way of confirming what your gut already knows. There it was, tagged under Valora's name, reshared by a distant cousin. First Thanksgiving in our dream home. So blessed to be surrounded by loved ones. I clicked. The photo was taken at the new house, the one I helped pay for. Everyone was there. Thatcher, Valora, Aaron, even my brother's widow, who barely speaks to anyone. They were all gathered around the long dining table I had once imagined sitting at. Napkins folded into perfect triangles, candles lit in matching glass holders. Erin was mid-laugh, wearing a dress I had mailed her for Halloween. My face wasn't there. I zoomed in. Where I used to sit, next to Erin, across from Thatcher, was now an empty space. Or maybe the chair had been moved altogether. It didn't matter. It wasn't the absence that stung. It was the erasure. The photo was posted by a friend who didn't know I hadn't been invited. That made it worse. The assumption was that of course I would be there. Of course the woman who helped pay for the place was sitting somewhere in the glow of those lights. But I wasn't. And no one had said anything. I put the phone down, but it might as well have been cemented in my hand. I felt the weight of every Thanksgiving that had come before. Me waking up at 5 to defrost the turkey, ironing napkins, making Valora's cranberry sauce from scratch because store-bought tastes processed, organizing games for the kids, filling wine glasses just right so no one had to reach. They were all scenes in which I moved like clockwork, unseen but essential. Now, this new chapter had been written without me. I opened my messages and typed, "Why didn't you invite me?" Backspaced, typed again. I saw the pictures. Deleted. You could have said something. Erased. Every version felt weak, desperate, or worse, childish. So I said nothing. Because sometimes silence says it all. That night, after washing a dish that didn't need washing, I opened the cabinet where I kept envelopes and random paperwork. I printed the photo and, without flinching, taped it to the fridge. Right beside it, I pinned an old family picture from a decade ago, taken during a chaotic Thanksgiving in the old house. In that photo, I was blurry, half-turned, holding a tray of rolls. Not centered, not posed. But I was there. The contrast was jarring. One photo told the truth of where I had been. The other told the truth of where I no longer belonged. I wasn't just left out, I was erased. I hadn't been sleeping well. Nights felt too long. Mornings came too quickly, and I woke each day with the same heaviness in my chest. So when I headed to the bank that morning, just to finalize paperwork for tax purposes, I wasn't expecting the air to thicken around me with a single sentence. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the young teller said as he squinted at the screen. "This home is listed solely under Valora Knox." The air conditioning hummed. Chairs creaked in the lobby behind me. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" He turned the screen slightly, showing me a digital copy of the deed, official as a government stamp. One name. Not mine. Not even Thatcher's. Just Valora. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out into the parking lot like I was wading through molasses. By the time I made it to my car, my hands were trembling so badly I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the door. At home, I yanked open the drawer where I kept documents, dumped everything on the floor, and began digging. Old birthday cards, insurance papers, my late husband's pension letters. Then finally, there it was. A faded, coffee-stained piece of paper, signed in Thatcher's hand, dated July. It was simple, informal, but clear. Agreement to co-own property at Springvale Estate. Co-owners, Rowena Craft and Thatcher Royce. I sat back on the rug and stared at the signature like it might vanish. Then another memory bubbled up. Weeks after signing that agreement, I'd met Thatcher at his office. He had handed me a new form, smiling. Just a quick correction on the address line. Same deal, nothing changed. Valora was stressing about the paperwork matching. I hadn't read it. God help me, I hadn't read it. It had felt harmless. He'd been calm, assuring. I'd trusted him, not because he was my son, but because I didn't think I had a reason not to. Now that paper, whatever it was probably the document that wrote me out completely. My throat tightened. I stood, called the county clerk's office, and requested a copy of the final recorded deed. It was emailed to me within the hour. There was no Rowena Craft listed anywhere. Just Valora. Again. I called Thatcher. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Mom," he said cheerfully. "Everything okay?" I took a breath, tried to steady my voice. "I just saw the deed. My name's not on it." A pause. Not long. Just enough. "Oh, that. Yeah. We figured it'd be simpler to keep it clean. You know, for taxes, refinancing down the line. It's all the same. You still helped." "It's not all the same, Thatcher." He sighed, like I was overreacting. "Don't overthink it, Mom. It was just paperwork. We appreciate you." His tone wasn't apologetic. It was polished, diplomatic. Like he was talking to a client, not his mother. Not the woman who had fronted 6 figures for the home he now owned nothing of. "I see," I said quietly. He didn't ask anything else. Didn't offer a solution. Didn't even pretend to soften the blow. We hung up. Outside, the sun had started to dip. I grabbed my keys again, this time with steady fingers, and walked out the door. In the car, I sat in silence for a long while. Not angry, just hollow. Then the anger came, slow, coiling in my chest like smoke. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. "They didn't forget me," I said aloud. "They erased me, on paper." I didn't cry. There was nothing left to grieve. I had signed myself out of my own legacy. 2 days had passed since the deed email. I hadn't spoken to Thatcher again. There was nothing left to say. Not without proof. And I needed something they couldn't explain away with rehearsed lines or smiles stretched too tight. I sat in my car outside Thatcher's office building, the same one where I'd signed that second document, the one he called just a correction. The autumn wind pushed leaves across the sidewalk as I walked inside. The front desk was staffed by a young woman with sleek hair and nervous energy. "Hi," I said calmly. "I visited here a few weeks ago. I signed a document in the lobby with my son. I was wondering, do you keep camera footage for this building?" She blinked, uncertain. We do, but it's not usually released unless—" "It's for a legal review," I said, quietly but firmly. "Not police, just clarity." She paused, then nodded slowly. "We keep archives for safety purposes. I'll need your name and the date." I gave her both. By that evening, Malcolm Dyer was seated beside me in his office, squinting at the screen of his laptop. The building's management had sent him the file after verifying his credentials. We watched in silence. There I was, walking through the lobby in a beige coat, smiling lightly as I greeted Thatcher. He leaned down to hug me, too hard, too staged, and ushered me to the couch near the reception area. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but the audio was clear. "You said it's just the address?" I heard myself ask. "Yeah, Mom, nothing big," Thatcher said. "Just sign here, and we'll get it done fast before Valora picks Aaron up." He pushed the document toward me, his body blocking the view briefly. The camera caught my pen moving. I never flipped through the pages. Just that one signature. Malcolm hit pause. No mention of rights, no clarification, just a gentle nudge and a smile. I swallowed hard. He used my trust like it was a blank check. Malcolm didn't respond at first. Then he said, "It's enough to show a pattern, enough to raise questions, but it's not an automatic win." "I don't want to win," I said. "I want them to stop pretending this was a misunderstanding." He nodded slowly. Then we moved forward, carefully. The room fell silent again. The footage played in a loop, my smile, his hands, that signature. When I left Malcolm's office, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the pavement. I walked slowly to my car, not because I was tired, but because I needed the weight of what I had just seen to settle. Inside the car, I didn't start the engine. I sat with both hands on the steering wheel, gripping it as if to steady myself against the truth. Not the emotional truth, I'd accepted that days ago, but the legal one. The kind of truth no one can spin or smooth over. I stared ahead, watching families carry groceries into townhomes, watching a little girl hopscotch between chalk-drawn squares on the sidewalk. There had been a time when Erin used to do that, right in front of my porch, calling out, "Grandma, count for me!" Now I wasn't even sure she'd remember that. I whispered, "No more pretending," because that's what it had been. Pretending that this was all an accident, pretending that Thatcher hadn't made calculated choices, pretending that I'd just been left out by mistake. The drive home was quiet. The roads weren't. But inside the car, the only sound was the steady beat of my own breathing, a pulse of resolve building stronger with every mile. They could erase names from paper, but if they were going to rewrite history, I was going to retrieve the pen. I asked Thatcher to meet me at a small cafe off Legacy Drive, the one with chipped wooden booths and 2 strong coffee. He used to love their blueberry muffins when he was little. Back then, he'd sit across from me swinging his legs under the table, asking if birds ever forgot how to fly. Now he walked in crisp and distracted, checking his phone before looking up. "Hey, Mom," he said, sliding into the booth without a hug or a handshake. I took my time, pulled a manila envelope from my bag, set it on the table between us. "Thanks for coming." He nodded like it was a business meeting. "You said you wanted to talk?" "I want to clear the air," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But not with words, with facts." I slid the envelope toward him. Inside were 2 things: the original handwritten agreement about the house, and the transcript of the security footage from the building where he tricked me into signing away my ownership. He glanced at the documents, then leaned back, arms crossed. "Mom, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." My hands didn't shake. "Am I? You're blowing things out of proportion. You've always been emotional, hard to reason with when you feel cornered." He said it casually, like reciting from a script, as if this conversation had already been rehearsed with Valora in their kitchen over wine and well-plated cheese. "Don't do this," he added. "It's not healthy." I stared at him, not blinking. "You mean it's not convenient?" He exhaled. "Look, the house is fine. You helped. We're grateful. But dragging legal paperwork into this," I cut in, quiet but firm. "This isn't noise. It's a boundary. You crossed it. I'm just drawing it in ink now." He looked away, out the window. "We don't need drama." "No, you need secrecy," I said. "You have one chance, Thatcher. One. Make this right, privately, quietly, respectfully." He let out a short laugh. Nervous. Flat. "You wouldn't." I picked up my cup, took the last sip of lukewarm tea, and stood. "You think I won't. That's why you did it." The envelope stayed on the table. I didn't offer another word. The bell above the door jingled as I walked out, and I didn't turn around to see if he opened the folder. Outside, the air smelled like winter was arriving early. I reached my car, unlocked it, and slid into the driver's seat. My pulse was steady, not relief. Resolve. I sat still for a moment, watching the reflection of the cafe windows in my rearview mirror. No more warnings. I whispered. That was the last one. They didn't believe me. That would cost them. The air inside the house felt different after the cafe. Not colder, not warmer, just thinner, like something had left the room with me and refused to come back in. I kicked off my shoes, hung my coat, and walked straight to the dining table where my folders were already spread open. My tea from the morning sat untouched, the lemon slice now shriveled at the rim. I sat down and replayed Thatcher's voice in my head, every word from that conversation etched clearer with each pass. You're emotional, hard to reason with, blowing things out of proportion. Like lines from a script he'd memorized. I wrote it all down in a spiral notebook. His exact phrases, my questions, the dates, times. I placed it beside the deed copy, the video transcript, and the agreement with his signature. My file was no longer a collection. It was a case. By mid-morning, I was parked in front of Malcolm Dyer's office, gripping my purse like it held more than paper. It held a version of the truth I needed someone else to see. He didn't greet me with small talk, just opened the door and gestured to the chair across his desk. Let's get started. I handed him the envelope. He took out each piece, read in silence, and looked up. Are you ready to do this formally? I am. He nodded once. Then we begin here. He pulled out a legal pad and started building a timeline. When the money was transferred, when the documents were signed, the dates the footage covered. Each item I handed him sharpened the edge of his focus. They'll deny it, he said flatly. They'll say it was an honest misunderstanding, that it was for tax reasons or refinancing. We're going to need clarity on motive, proof that this was deliberate. It was, I said. They just didn't expect me to keep receipts. He didn't smile. We'll move carefully. He introduced me to Lydia, a paralegal who looked barely 30, but moved like she'd run a courtroom. She spoke with purpose, guiding me through the next steps. Asset hold requests, document notarization, a possible injunction on any mortgage activity until our claim was reviewed. It's not complicated, she said, but it's detailed. You'll need to keep everything, every message, every paper, every response. I nodded, though most of her language sounded like static. I wasn't following the legal terms. I was watching the structure form, one brick at a time. By the time I left Malcolm's office, the sun had dropped behind the clouds. I drove home without turning on the radio, my thoughts too loud to compete with music. Once inside, I walked from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, the edge of picture frames, the lip of the sink. My house had always felt lived in. Now it felt loaded, like a war room dressed as a home. I opened the drawer in my bedroom and pulled out a framed photo of Bill, my late husband. He was smiling, wearing the ugly sweater Aaron had once spilled cranberry sauce on. I stared at it for a long time before whispering, I wish you were here, but I'll carry this myself. Then I pulled out a fresh yellow legal pad and sat at the kitchen counter. No journaling, no introspection, just facts, dates, documents, names, screenshots of texts, images from the footage, handwriting comparisons. I was no longer asking to be heard. I was building a record, because the silence they counted on had just become my sharpest weapon. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I woke up to a text from a friend I hadn't heard from in months. Just a link and a brief note. Thought you'd want to see this. It was a video on Valora's public page. A promotional clip, styled like a Hallmark ad. Soft background music, golden filters, children running through leaves, slow pans of a dining room set for 20. The caption read, "So grateful for those who support us. Our first Thanksgiving in our forever home." I watched in silence. Everyone was there. Thatcher laughing as he carved a turkey, Valora clinking glasses with her mother, Aaron twirling in a sparkly dress. I wasn't just absent, I was invisible. Midway through, a still photo appeared. A wide family shot taken on their back patio. The same table I'd helped buy, the chairs I'd assembled one by one in their garage. Faces smiled, hands intertwined. But in the corner, blurry but unmistakable, was my shoulder, cropped out. I paused the frame, stared at the edge of my sweater, the same one I wore that day at the signing. They hadn't even bothered to retake the photo, just edited me out. Scrolling down, the comments made it worse. "You two are the blueprint for real family." Such class. No drama, just love. So inspiring, especially when some people bring only negativity. I felt heat behind my eyes, but blinked it away. Not sadness, rage. They weren't ignoring me anymore. They were rewriting me. Later that afternoon, I was organizing bills when an email pinged into my inbox. The address was familiar, an old shared account once used for planning Aaron's birthday parties, apparently still linked to my name. Subject: Final guest list and dietary preferences, Royce residence. It was from a local printing service, confirming a list of names to be used for custom place cards. A glance told me everything. 26 names. Colleagues, neighbors, old friends of Valora's parents. My name wasn't among them, but I recognized others. People I hadn't seen in years. People I knew barely remembered how to spell my last name. My jaw tightened. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I forwarded the email to Malcolm with no subject, no commentary. Then I opened a new message to the Springvale Estate property manager. I wrote, "To whom it may concern, this is formal notification of an ongoing legal investigation related to fraudulent transfer of ownership and associated disputes involving property located at..." No pleasantries, no apologies, just a clear, factual tone. I reread it twice, then hit send. That evening, I sat on the living room floor and pulled out 2 family photos. One from 5 years ago, Christmas in matching pajamas, laughter mid-frame. I had been holding Aaron, both of us covered in flour from baking cookies. The other photo was a printout of the one in the video, cropped, polished, perfect. I placed them side by side and marked with a pen the names of each person who knew what happened and said nothing. Thatcher, Valora, her parents, 2 of my nieces, even Uncle Ron, who always used to say, "Blood matters more than noise." They weren't silent out of ignorance. They were silent because it was easier, and I was done making things easy for them. If they wanted to rewrite the story, I'd let them, just not with the ending they expected. Thanksgiving morning arrived with none of the usual smells or sounds. No cinnamon, no pie crusts baking, no oven beeps. Just the steady hum of my kettle and the quiet flick of my pen sealing the envelope. I triple-checked the contents. Legal documents, notarized statements, and one note written in my own hand. Then I handed it off to a courier service, timing the delivery for late afternoon. By then, they'd be pouring wine, making toasts, laughing. Across town, the Royce home glowed from every window. Lanterns dangled from the porch, and soft jazz played through outdoor speakers. Inside, the dining table was a Pinterest dream. Layers of ivory linen, crystal stemware, place cards with gold embossing. Not one with my name. Everyone was already 2 drinks in when Valora dimmed the lights and called for attention. "Before we eat, a little something to celebrate our journey." She clicked her phone, and the big screen in the living room came to life. At first, it was a montage. Thatcher hammering fence posts, Valora posing mid-paint stroke, Aaron running barefoot through the half-finished yard. Guests oohed and awed in all the right places. Then the screen cut to black. And then my face appeared. I sat in a plain chair, no makeup, no lighting tricks. Just me. My voice was measured. I didn't name names. I didn't raise my tone. "I gave $140,000, I began. Not for a property, but to a family I believed I still belonged to. I trusted my son. I did not read the second set of papers because I believed in his word. That was my mistake. But silence will not be my legacy." The camera stayed steady on me for the entire 2 minutes. At the end, I looked straight into the lens. This is not revenge. This is clarity. I'm no longer asking to be remembered. I'm making sure I won't be erased. Silence fell over the room like someone had sucked the air out. Then the knock at the door. Valora, flustered, opened it. A delivery man stood holding the envelope. For Mrs. Knox. Time sensitive. He didn't step inside, just handed it over and left. She tore it open. Inside, the legal paperwork unfolded like a final act. Petition for restitution, evidence index, attorney letterhead. Tucked at the back was a single handwritten note. You wrote me out. Now it's my turn. No one spoke. Later, I heard through a friend that someone knocked over a wine glass, that Valora locked herself in the powder room, that Uncle Ron muttered something like, I told you this would bite back. But by then, I was sitting in my garden with a cup of Earl Grey, wrapped in the old shawl Bill used to tease me about. The wind was light, curling through the dead leaves. My phone buzzed twice. I didn't check it. I wasn't basking in triumph. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like correction. They needed to know I wouldn't disappear quietly, I whispered to no one. And now they did. This wasn't revenge. This was the record being corrected. The house had never been quieter. 1 week had passed since Thanksgiving, and not a single word had come from Thatcher or Valora. No apology. No questions. Not even denial. Just silence. The same weapon they thought I would use to stay hidden. Instead, I had used it to speak. That morning, my phone lit up with a message from Imelda, my youngest, my quiet one. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You were right. I see it now. I stared at the screen, the words blurring a little. I didn't cry. It wasn't enough to undo what had been done, but it was something. She had seen it. Not just the legal betrayal, but the emotional erasure. She had seen me. Later that day, I sat across from Malcolm in his office, the same folder open between us. He was ready to proceed. More filings, escalation, depositions if needed. But I surprised him. Let's pause, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I just needed them to know I saw everything, that they didn't get away with it in the dark. That's enough for now. He didn't push, just nodded and closed the folder. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through the old neighborhood. The trees were mostly bare now, the last of autumn swept up into piles along the curbs. I passed the community center, the one with the corkboard inside where families posted announcements, lost pet flyers, photos from soccer games. I parked, walked in, and pinned a photo of my own. A single image of a house key resting on an empty dining table. No frame, no caption, no names. Just a statement to anyone who looked close enough. Afterward, I returned home. I made myself a sandwich I didn't finish and stared at the window as evening rolled in. At exactly 6, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video call. Erin. Her little face filled the screen, her hair pulled into a ponytail, still wearing the Thanksgiving dress from the photos. Grandma, why didn't you come? I steadied my voice. Sometimes grown-ups forget what's important, sweetheart. But I won't forget again, okay? She nodded, eyes wide. You're still coming for Christmas, right? I paused, then smiled gently. We'll see, honey. We'll see. We talked a bit more, about her school project, her new cat, how she wanted to learn how to bake muffins. I promised to send her a recipe card. When the call ended, I sat still for a long time. There would be no reunion dinner, no dramatic apology in front of a room full of guests, no sudden change of heart. But there was quiet. And in that quiet, I found something that felt close to peace. I poured a cup of tea, turned off the lights, and let the glow from the Christmas tree fill the room. One by one, I deleted old photos from my phone. Not out of anger, but to make room. They may never fix what they broke, but I won't keep bleeding for it. If life has taught me anything, it's that silence isn't always surrender. It's often the pause before a decision. I spent too many years mistaking self-sacrifice for love and confusing loyalty with invisibility. But standing up for myself didn't mean turning against my family. It meant refusing to be erased from my own story. To those watching who've ever been told to stay quiet, to not stir the pot, I say this: your voice matters, your presence matters. And sometimes, protecting your peace means closing a chapter, even if the ending isn't neat. What about you? Have you ever been written out of a story you helped build? How did you take the pen back? If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 in the comments. Or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like the video, I still want to hear your thoughts. What didn't sit right? What would you have done differently? And if you believe in stories that reflect real strength, quiet courage, and the resilience of everyday people, subscribe to this channel. More stories like this are on the way, and I'd love to have you here when they arrive.